Have you ever stopped to think about what it takes for someone to find love again in their golden years? In a society that often places so much value on youth and beauty, the journey of older adults seeking companionship can be both touching and challenging. It's a topic not often explored, but one that resonates deeply for those who have lived through the ups and downs of life, from career changes to raising families and navigating personal losses. Finding love later in life isn't just about companionship. It's about rediscovering joy, trust, and intimacy after years of life experience. In this video, we're diving deep into the lives of seniors who are bravely navigating the often complex and daunting world of modern dating. These individuals are not just searching for a partner, they are rediscovering parts of themselves that had been buried for years, often by the weight of societal expectations and personal history. We'll hear moving personal stories from older adults who have shown incredible resilience in their pursuit of connection. These stories highlight not just their triumphs, but also the challenges they face. They deal with societal pressures that can feel harsh at times, and will explore the emotional and psychological battles behind what might appear to be unreasonable or even extravagant expectations in dating. Stay with us through the end of this video to gain a deeper understanding of what love truly means in later years, and how dating programs specifically tailored to seniors are making a difference in people's lives. These programs are opening doors for so many older adults, helping them find companionship and a renewed sense of purpose. By the end, you'll have a new appreciation for the wisdom, courage, and emotional depth that our elderly loved ones bring to the table in the pursuit of love and connection. Whether you're seeking inspiration, empathy, or simply a better understanding of what it means to be an aging heart looking for connection, this video has something meaningful for you. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so now and make sure to activate the notification bell so you never miss out on these important discussions. Your support means so much to me, and if you enjoyed this video, consider liking and sharing it with others. Together, we can continue spreading these valuable lessons to help even more people on their journey to love, no matter their age. For what seemed like an agonizing eternity, I paced back and forth, my eyes darting nervously between the ticking clock on the wall and the empty expanse around me. Time itself seemed to stretch, each second dragging on as though mocking my anticipation. The weight of waiting pressed heavily on my chest, every minute amplifying my growing sense of anxious excitement. It felt as though the entire world had slowed to a standstill, and in that suspended moment, I was trapped in a sea of uncertainty. What would she be like? Would our meeting go smoothly? Was I truly ready for whatever this encounter might bring? Just when I thought I could no longer bear the tension, she appeared, stepping into view from the distance, moving with a slow, deliberate grace that seemed to challenge the hurried pace of the world around her. She was walking toward me, each step deliberate and calm, as if she had all the time in the world. Her presence was magnetic, pulling my attention away from everything else. The closer she came, the more I was struck by her composure, her bearing. She wasn't just walking, she was embodying a quiet strength that seemed to resonate from within. With every measured step, she seemed to exude a calm confidence, a sense of inner peace that immediately drew me in. It wasn't the kind of arrogance that demanded attention, but something far more profound, an effortless elegance, like the stillness of a lake reflecting the clear sky above. When she finally reached me, I couldn't help but notice how poised she was, and how perfectly she carried herself. Her build was modest yet strong, not flashy or ostentatious, but dignified in its own right. It was clear that she had lived a life full of stories, of experiences that had shaped her into the woman standing before me. Her eyes met mine with a steady gaze, and there was an unspoken warmth in them, a calm assurance that somehow made me feel at ease, despite the unfamiliarity of the moment. It was as though, despite all the anticipation and nervousness that had built up in me, her presence had a way of gently soothing my worries. The building manager, a quiet man with a formal air about him, introduced us to the usual pleasantries, his words almost blending into the background as I found myself drawn to her. After a brief exchange, he gave a polite nod and excused himself, leaving us to navigate the awkwardness of this first meeting on our own. We stood there, two strangers in the middle of a quiet park playground, surrounded by an uneasy silence. The air felt thick with the weight of new beginnings, and yet, despite the uncertainty of it all, there was something undeniably right about the moment. Her name was Min Noyet. The name itself carried a certain elegance, like the soft glow of the moonlight reflecting on still water. She was 52, a woman who had long since left behind the hustle of the corporate world. Retired now, she spoke of her life with a matter-of-fact simplicity, revealing that she lived comfortably on her monthly pension, just over 7 million VND. It wasn't a lavish amount, but it was enough, she said, to give her the kind of peace that came with not needing much. Her tone was direct, devoid of any pretense or hesitation. She spoke openly about her past, about her only son, who, despite his age, was still unmarried, and about the fact that she had been divorced for over a decade. There was no bitterness in her words, only the quiet strength of someone who had long since made peace with their history. It was as if she had learned to embrace her past with clarity and grace, and now carried it with a quiet dignity, unburdened by regret or sorrow. Her honesty was refreshing, and it made me feel almost vulnerable in comparison, but I responded in kind, offering a brief account of my own life. The conversation, initially awkward and unsure, began to flow more naturally as we shared our stories, our lives unfolding in small glimpses. But then, just when I thought the conversation might settle into something more routine, she did something unexpected. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes still holding mine with that calm intensity, and without missing a beat, she asked, "Why don't we go check out your place? If we both feel good about it, I could move in right away." Her words were bold and direct, yet there was a warmth behind them, an openness that both surprised and intrigued me. It was as if she wasn't just asking about a house, but about the possibility of something deeper, something more. The idea of it, of opening my life to her in that way, caught me off guard, and for a moment, I stood there, speechless, trying to comprehend the audacity of her suggestion. But then, a part of me admired her decisiveness. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing, just a straightforwardness that was both disarming and oddly comforting. It was clear that she was a woman who knew what she wanted, and who didn't waste time with needless formalities or doubts. At that moment, I realized that this meeting, this very conversation, was about far more than just two strangers exchanging pleasantries. It was about two lives, two histories, possibly intersecting in ways neither of us had yet imagined. The second requirement she mentioned took me completely by surprise. We were both in the twilight of our years, with memories of past adventures fading into the soft glow of nostalgia, but Linda, always the dreamer, always the spark of excitement, proposed something that felt both outrageous and beautiful. She suggested we embark on a journey together, a long and winding one, to a southern land she lovingly called the Land of Clouds. It was a place she had fantasized about for years, a destination that was more than just a spot on a map, but a symbol of a dream she had carried deep within her heart for as long as I'd known her. It wasn't merely a vacation she sought. No, Linda's vision was far grander. She wanted us to have a wedding photo shoot there. A photo shoot, mind you, not just any ordinary snapshot, but a moment frozen in time that would capture the essence of our love and companionship in a place that was as breathtakingly beautiful as her spirit. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment one below to let me know that you are still here with me. The idea of spending an entire month in such a stunning location, taking part in a professional photo shoot to commemorate our connection, was overwhelming, to say the least. The thought of living out this dream with her was both exhilarating and daunting. It was a huge request, one that demanded more than just time and effort. It called for an emotional investment, a leap of faith into the unknown. But there was a catch so significant it made my heart race. This wasn't going to be a simple weekend escape, a fleeting moment of pleasure. Linda proposed that this trip would last for at least a month, and here's where the weight of it all fell on me. She expected me to bear the full brunt of the financial burden. Travel expenses, accommodation, the entire photo shoot experience. It would all fall squarely on my shoulders. As she looked at me, her eyes wide with earnest hope, she said with such sincerity, "I promise you, I'll be a wonderful companion on this journey. I'll make sure you're always comfortable, and always well cared for. It will be a peaceful, unforgettable time for both of us." Her words were like a balm, soothing the hesitation rising in my chest, yet I couldn't shake the growing sense of unease. Then, with a little shrug, a gesture that spoke volumes of her unwavering determination, she added, "If the costs seem too high, we can always consider a shorter trip, maybe somewhere closer to home. But the photo shoot, that's non-negotiable. It's been a dream of mine for so long. Please understand." As she spoke, I felt a strange mix of admiration and disbelief. I couldn't help but chuckle at the sheer audacity of it all. Here I was, in the midst of what could only be described as a whirlwind of emotions. Amused, stunned, and yes, deeply moved by the courage of this woman, who, even in her later years, still carried with her the boundless spirit of a young dreamer. It was both absurd and beautiful, a wild, unexpected turn in the path of our shared life. The third requirement Linda laid out was even more unexpected than the last. After we'd spent what seemed like an eternity, though in reality it had only been 6 months, living together, our lives intricately woven into a patchwork of shared spaces, quiet routines, and whispered promises, Linda suddenly announced her decision with a sense of finality that took me completely by surprise. She wanted us to register our marriage. At first, the words didn't quite sink in. I wondered if I had misheard her. We had already been living together, and I thought we had established a sense of mutual understanding. But no, this was something more, something that demanded commitment and permanence, something that changed the very fabric of our relationship. And yet, that wasn't even the most jarring part. As if registering our marriage was not a monumental enough decision, Linda's next words felt like a punch to the gut, leaving me dizzy with disbelief. Once we were officially married, she declared that everything in our household would be different. She would take charge. I would no longer be the co-equal partner I had always imagined myself to be. I would no longer have a say in the management of our shared life together. It felt as though a sudden, heavy fog had descended upon me. She looked at me with the same certainty she always had when voicing something she truly believed in. She was not joking. There was no humor in her eyes, no softening of the edges. She told me, matter-of-factly, that I would be required to hand over my pension card to her. Every month, I would receive a fixed allowance from her, an amount she deemed appropriate for my needs. The notion of having to ask for money to spend on my own life, of being forced to operate within some arbitrary, externally imposed financial limit, crushed something deep within me. This was not about practicality, nor about managing finances as a couple. It was about control, about her need to establish dominance in a way that was both subtle and stark. I wasn't just being asked to contribute to our household finances, nor to share our resources in a spirit of collaboration. No, this was something more authoritarian. It felt as though I was being relegated to a childlike role, where every penny I spent would be scrutinized, where I would be forced to submit to her rules. And it didn't stop there. If I exceeded the monthly allowance, even once, even accidentally, she told me, there would be consequences. It wasn't a gentle reminder or a request to be more careful with spending. No, she was emphatic. I would be punished. The punishment, she explained with chilling clarity, would be extra housework. If I purchased the confines of the prescribed amount, if I strayed too far from the limits she set, I would be relegated to scrubbing the floors, washing the windows, and doing the laundry, not as a partner sharing in the tasks, but as a form of penance. It felt as though she was setting up a system of rewards and punishments, where my freedom was tethered to her whims, my every move watched and judged. At first, I thought I was misinterpreting her. Surely, she was joking, I thought. But her expression remained unyielding, a mask of determination that left no room for doubt. The seriousness in her voice, and the firmness in her gaze, told me everything I needed to know. No, she was not joking. This was real. This was happening. And I, helplessly, was expected to accept it. The feeling that washed over me was a strange mix of confusion and fear. It was as if I had woken up in an alternate reality, where the lines between love and control had blurred beyond recognition. How could this be the same woman I had fallen in love with? The woman whose laughter had once filled our home with warmth, whose smile had made the mundane seem magical. The idea that the person I loved could now turn this into some kind of transactional, almost paternalistic relationship left me reeling. It felt, in so many ways, like I was living in a bizarre version of a game, like some twisted version of houseplay, where the rules were made up on the fly and everyone had to obey them or face consequences. I couldn't help but feel like I was losing a part of myself in all this. The thought of handing over control of my finances, the very thing I had worked for, the very thing that had given me independence and pride, was almost unbearable. To be bound by her decisions, my autonomy reduced to a set amount of money each month, felt like the ultimate surrender. I felt a pang of helplessness, a gnawing sense that I was no longer in control of my own life. My very freedom seemed to be in jeopardy, held hostage by her arbitrary rules. What was even more disconcerting was the overwhelming sense of powerlessness that flooded me when I realized that this was not just about finances. It was about something deeper, more insidious. It was about control over my every action, over how I lived, how I spent my time, my money, and, in essence, my very soul. This was not love. It was a carefully crafted cage, and I was the one being locked inside it, inch by inch. It felt like I was staring at a mirror and seeing a reflection that was no longer mine. How could I have not seen this before? How could I have not known that the woman I loved, the woman I had trusted, would be the one to build these invisible walls around me? And yet, here I was, struggling to find the words to voice the storm of emotions swirling inside me. The more I thought about it, the more my heart pounded with a sickening mix of confusion and dread. What was I to do now? Was this the person I had committed to? Or had I unknowingly stepped into a trap from which there was no escape? I wasn't sure I had the answers. But one thing was painfully clear: things would never be the same again. As I looked at Linda, my once beloved partner, I realized that everything I thought I knew about us was now in question, and I was left to wonder if I could ever reclaim the freedom I had lost in the wake of her demands. The fourth requirement Linda shared with me was perhaps the most unusual of all. As she spoke, her words carried a weight that seemed to hang in the air, filling the space between us with an undeniable tension. I felt my pulse quicken, each word she uttered stirring a mixture of confusion, curiosity, and a growing sense of unease. Linda, having been divorced for over 10 years, had long since adjusted to the solitude of sleeping alone. The years of independence had shaped her, molding her into someone who no longer felt the need to share a bed, even with someone she was romantically involved with. She was resolute in this. No matter how deeply we felt for one another or how committed we became, she needed us to maintain separate bedrooms. Her explanation, though logical in her mind, felt almost foreign to me. She believed that by keeping our spaces distinct, we would both have the freedom to sleep in peace without the disturbances that sometimes arise from sharing a bed. No tossing and turning, no restless nights, no one to disrupt the tranquility of her sanctuary. In her eyes, this wasn't just a preference. It was a matter of self-preservation, an essential part of maintaining the peace and comfort she had become accustomed to over the years. As I sat there, listening to her, my mind raced. On one hand, I could understand the desire for personal space, especially after years of living alone and growing used to the rhythms of solitude. I could see how, as we age and become more set in our ways, the comfort of routine and space becomes even more vital. But on the other hand, the idea of a marriage without the intimacy and physical closeness that typically defines it was, frankly, unsettling. It stirred something deep inside me, a sense of loss, of longing for the kind of connection that most people envision in a partnership. To me, marriage had always been about more than just emotional support or intellectual connection. It was about shared experiences, both big and small, and that included the intimacy of physical proximity. The thought of spending our nights apart, not in the same bed, not wrapped in the warmth of each other's presence, felt like a chasm opening up between us, a place where our shared intimacy could easily be eroded by distance and routine. But as Linda spoke, her eyes steady and unwavering, I realized this wasn't just about us. It was about her need for independence, a need that had been nurtured and reinforced by years of living alone. For her, the idea of sleeping in the same bed was not just a simple act of closeness, it was a surrender of a part of herself that she wasn't ready to give up. She wasn't rejecting me, but rather protecting a part of her identity that had been forged in solitude, a life she had come to rely on and cherish. In the context of our potential life together, this was her way of ensuring that she wouldn't lose herself, even as we forged a new future together. Once she finished explaining this, she went on to the final part of her list of demands. Her voice softened, but the matter was just as serious. She spoke of household responsibilities, and her expectations for how things would function should we live together. She outlined everything clearly, stating that, if we were to share a home, she would take on certain tasks and responsibilities. Each word was measured and calculated, almost as if she had practiced it all before. There was no room for negotiation, no space for uncertainty. It was her way or no way. As I listened, I couldn't help but wonder, was this truly the foundation of a partnership, or was it a structure built more on individual needs, carefully compartmentalized, and kept at arm's length from anything resembling shared vulnerability? The more I thought about it, the more questions swirled in my mind. I had envisioned marriage as a union in the fullest sense, a coming together in every sense, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. But Linda's vision was something altogether different, a partnership that respected boundaries, preserved independence, and navigated life together from a distance. How would this work for us? Could this arrangement ever offer the kind of closeness I had always dreamed of in a relationship? I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of curiosity stir within me. Why are so many elderly individuals choosing to remarry later in life? What compelling force propels them to seek out companionship again, long after the passage of time has shaped their hearts and minds? The reasons behind this growing trend deserve our full attention, for they offer a profound insight into the nature of human desire, the unyielding need for connection, and the limitless capacity for love, even in the twilight years of life. In recent years, a remarkable shift has occurred, one that has quietly swept through the hearts of many. Dating programs tailored specifically for seniors have surged in popularity. Shows like Late Love, Not Too Late have captured the collective imagination of viewers, offering a window into the lives of older individuals bravely navigating the complex world of love and relationships. With their candid and unapologetically bold approach to dating, these programs have shattered stereotypes, inviting us to witness a raw and unfiltered side of aging. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. What has taken many by surprise is the unapologetic nature of the elderly participants. Their words are sharp, their observations unflinching. Comments such as, "You're not my type, old man," "Untrustworthy, a loser." "Young guys are untrustworthy too." "If we're not compatible, I'll move on to the next 1" resonate with viewers far beyond the confines of the screen. It's this fearless honesty, this refusal to settle for anything less than true compatibility, that has fascinated audiences across generations. But the question lingers. Is this growing fascination with senior dating simply a fleeting curiosity, or does it reflect something far more profound about our evolving perceptions of aging? Unlike the carefully crafted personas of younger generations, seniors in these dating programs exude a refreshing directness, even bluntness, that many find deeply compelling. Having weathered the storms of life, failed marriages, the harsh realities of career setbacks, the inevitable health challenges, they have long since discarded the games and pretenses that often cloud youthful romance. They no longer hesitate to speak their minds, their desires, and their boundaries. They've come to understand something that many of us spend our lives chasing: what they want and what they will no longer tolerate. In a world that often brushes aside the wisdom of age, these seniors stand as powerful symbols of unrelenting authenticity and self-assurance. What we are witnessing in these dating programs is not just the search for a late-in-life partner, but a celebration of self-awareness and emotional resilience. It's a testament to the human spirit's unbreakable yearning for connection, a reminder that love, in all its forms, does not have an expiration date. These individuals, having lived through decades of triumphs and trials, are proof that the heart's capacity for love and intimacy is boundless, unmarked by the passage of years. In their quest for companionship, they remind us that it is never too late to seek joy, never too late to rediscover the beauty of shared moments, and never too late to open our hearts to another. At first, the connection between Helen and Robert seemed full of promise, like the beginning of a gentle, hopeful story that both had longed for. They were two souls who had lived through their storms, both in search of someone to share their remaining years with. The early conversations flowed easily, full of laughter, shared memories, and unspoken understandings. They seemed to be on the same page, both yearning for companionship, peace, and perhaps a fresh chapter of their lives. There was a palpable sense of optimism in the air, as if destiny had brought them together at the right time. For Robert, who had spent years quietly mourning the loss of his beloved wife and now found solace in his adult son's company, the idea of starting over, even just a little, was a gentle comfort. For Helen, perhaps it was the same, a flicker of hope that after years of loneliness, she too could find someone to stand by her side as they both faced the inevitable passage of time. But as the days passed, something started to change. The warmth of their connection began to wane, replaced by an unexpected tension that Robert couldn't quite place. It started small at first, with casual comments about things Helen would like, things she needed. But soon, those little hints turned into outright demands. Robert, who had always prided himself on his simplicity, found himself faced with an unsettling series of requests that seemed almost outrageous. Helen, who had once appeared so gentle and understanding, now seemed to have an entirely different agenda. She asked Robert to buy her a high-end smartphone, one that cost around $1,000. She casually mentioned a gold bracelet, priced at another $250, that she had her eye on. But it didn't stop there. Helen then insisted that Robert give her half of his monthly pension, around $250. The sheer audacity of the requests left Robert stunned. How could someone, after only a few meetings, demand such extravagant gifts? How could she expect him to part with such a significant portion of his limited income so soon into their acquaintance? Robert was taken aback, his mind racing with confusion and unease. He had always been a modest man, someone who lived humbly and carefully. The thought of his small pension being asked for, his hard-earned savings slipping through his fingers for someone he barely knew, felt foreign to him. In the quiet of his home, where he had lived alone with his son since his wife passed 4 years ago, everything seemed suddenly out of place. He had hoped to find someone who would share his life, not someone who would see him as a financial resource. It was as if his deepest fears had been realized. This wasn't the connection he had dreamed of. The more he thought about it, the more it gnawed at him. He felt as though he was trapped in a situation he didn't fully understand, like he had been thrust into a game whose rules he had never been taught. What had started as a warm, promising possibility now felt like a heavy burden, one he couldn't shake. It was as if Helen's intentions, so carefully cloaked in the beginning, had suddenly emerged in their full, unsettling clarity. She wasn't just looking for companionship, or someone to share the simple joys of life with. No, she seemed to be looking for something far more complicated. What had once felt like a budding friendship now seemed like a transaction, with terms and conditions attached that Robert wasn't prepared to meet. For Robert, this moment became a sharp wake-up call, a painful realization that his search for a late-in-life partner had taken a turn he never anticipated. He had always hoped to find a kindred spirit, someone to walk beside him in the final chapter of his life. Someone who would appreciate the simple joys of quiet evenings, shared conversations, and the comfort of knowing they weren't alone. Instead, he was faced with something much more transactional, much more demanding than he could have ever imagined. The emotional weight of the situation pressed heavily on his chest, and he found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about relationships. How could someone, just a few meetings in, expect so much from him? Was love meant to come with such strings attached? The confusion deepened, and with it, a growing sense of betrayal. Robert had opened his heart, hoping for a connection that would bring him peace, but now he felt as though he had been duped into something entirely different. What had seemed like the promise of a new beginning was now, in his eyes, a stark reminder of how complicated and disappointing human relationships could be. He couldn't help but wonder if Helen had ever truly been interested in him, or if she had merely seen him as a means to an end. As the weight of that thought settled in, Robert realized that sometimes, even the most promising connections could be nothing more than illusions, fleeting moments that burned brightly only to fade into disappointment and regret. In her later years, when the prospect of finding a new life partner came into view, Helen found herself setting what many might consider unreasonable standards. But to call them unreasonable would be to miss the profound emotional weight behind each expectation. Her criteria were not born out of vanity or self-indulgence, but were a testament to the years of heartache, betrayal, and dashed hopes she had endured. For Helen, love had never been a casual affair. It had always been an all-encompassing force, one she gave completely and without hesitation. But the men she had chosen in the past, men who had seemed to promise her the world, had taken her heart and trust, only to trample on them with their selfishness, irresponsibility, and lack of commitment. She had loved deeply, and she had loved unconditionally, yet the only return she received was pain, a pain that cut to the very core of her being. Her first marriage had started like a fairy tale, full of hope and promise, yet it slowly turned into a nightmare of emotional neglect and infidelity. Her second relationship, though different in form, was just as destructive, rooted in fleeting affection and devoid of real depth. Each time she had poured herself into these men, she had done so with the belief that love could heal, that loyalty would be returned, and that perhaps, this time, it would be different. But it never was. The result was always the same: betrayal, heartbreak, loss. And with each loss, a piece of her trust had shattered, leaving behind a woman more wary, more guarded, more resolute in the knowledge that love was not enough to build a life upon. It had to be earned, reciprocated, and protected. Her grandparents, wise and weathered from their own life experiences, had always told her, once you stumble, you learn a lesson. And Helen had stumbled. Twice. Hard. The lessons, while painful, were unambiguous. Love was not a one-way street, and no one, not even the person you chose to share your life with, should ever have the power to take away your dignity, your self-worth, or your peace of mind. These realizations were hard-won, forged in the furnace of heartbreak, and they had irrevocably changed the way she viewed relationships. Now, as Helen stood on the precipice of her later years, she felt that it was no longer enough to simply have a partner for the sake of companionship. After a lifetime of giving and receiving so little in return, she understood that she was worth more than the mere scraps of affection or fleeting moments of attention that had defined her past relationships. She had grown tired of giving everything, only to be left empty-handed. This time, she was determined not to settle. Not for anyone who couldn't offer her the same depth of commitment, loyalty, and respect that she had longed for and deserved. She wasn't willing to compromise her values or her sense of self just for the sake of companionship. If anything, her earlier mistakes had made her fiercely pragmatic. She had learned the hard way that unconditional love, though beautiful, was often unreturned, and that one's heart could only withstand so many blows before it began to shut down in self-preservation. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. For Helen, a partner would need to embody not just affection but integrity, stability, and emotional maturity. She was no longer interested in games or empty promises. She wanted more than fleeting romance or casual love. She wanted someone who would see her as an equal, not just someone to be cared for, but someone to share life's triumphs and challenges with. She wasn't looking for perfection, but she was unwilling to settle for mediocrity or disrespect. She had learned from her past mistakes that she deserved more. The years of heartache had not broken her spirit. They had made it stronger, more resilient, and more discerning. Helen was not alone in this quest. In the world of senior dating, there are countless women like her. Women who have poured their hearts into their families, into their relationships, and their communities, only to be met with neglect, betrayal, or heartbreak in return. The weight of these emotional wounds is not easily seen by others, but it lingers, long after the physical scars have faded. And as these women grow older, they are less inclined to overlook the flaws they once may have tolerated. The pain of their past lives, of being treated as second-class citizens in relationships that should have nurtured them, leaves behind a quiet but powerful resolve. What some might dismiss as unrealistic demands, a lavish gift, a well-thought-out gesture, or a financial contribution, may be a manifestation of a deep, unspoken need for validation, security, and reassurance. These women have been burned before, and now, they refuse to accept anything less than what they know they deserve. It's not about materialism or superficial desires. It's about protection. It's about ensuring that their hearts will not be taken for granted again. They have learned that true love is not just about feelings. It is about mutual respect, commitment, and a shared vision for the future. For women like Helen, the search for a life partner is no longer just about love. It is about healing, rebuilding, and reclaiming the part of themselves that was lost in past relationships. It is about finding someone who will not only cherish them for who they are but also show up consistently and meaningfully, offering not just affection but partnership, support, and unwavering loyalty. It is a hard-won understanding that love is not simply about emotion. It is a decision, a commitment, and a partnership that requires both people to contribute equally. And so, as Helen set out on this new journey, she did so not with unrealistic hopes, but with a quiet and profound understanding that she was not asking for too much. She was simply asking for what she had always deserved, an equal love that was lasting and that would never leave her heart in tatters again. As we reflect on Helen's journey, we begin to understand the profound wisdom that comes with experience. She has faced heartbreak, betrayal, and loss, yet has emerged with a heart that is stronger, wiser, and more protective of itself. In her quest for a new partner, she has learned to value respect, honesty, and stability, qualities that she now knows are non-negotiable. But Helen's story is not just her own. It is a reflection of so many people who, after experiencing pain, learn to set boundaries, recognize their worth, and demand the love they deserve. As you watch her navigate this chapter of her life, ask yourself, what have I learned from Helen's experiences? What lessons can I carry with me as I move forward in my relationships? I'd love to hear from you. Please comment below and share one key lesson from this video that you plan to apply to your own life. What will you take away from Helen's story to bring positive change to your journey? If you enjoyed this video, please leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Your support helps us grow and reach more people with inspiring stories like Helen's. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.